Hello, welcome to Once Upon a Quantum Leap. We have a special episode to cap off this cycle of episodes. We're going to do question and answer.
Yay!
Yay. Well, you say yay now. Wait till you hear the questions and the answers. These are all going to pertain to consciousness and intuition and the things we've been covering in the last couple of seasons here.
Right. So thank you to our listeners for giving us some things to chew on and respond to. As usual, as we ask the questions, hopefully you can also contemplate some of these answers for yourself as well.
Mhm.
So thank you. I'm just so eager
Uh-huh.
to answer some questions from all of our
I know.
listeners,
All four of our
all
listeners
four of
wrote
our
in
listeners,
questions, us included
us
in that.
included.
Yes, I do
No,
listen.
I do
And
too.
yeah, we've got some questions
We do.
from various listeners and from people who got some intuitive reports. And yeah, it's kind of a mixed bag.
We
And we're
did. So
just
we
gonna
we
pick
pulled a
some
few of
out.
them. Yep, pulled a few, and we're going to do our best to give our own personal experience, insights, whatever. We're going to throw the ball and say, here's my thoughts on that question. So,
Now, these aren't just random questions like what color is blue, or these are questions about intuitive reports or consciousness or stuff that we've been talking about in this
mhm.
cycle of episodes, right?
Right, right. And so they've surfaced to the top. Um, we thought they were interesting questions and
Hmm.
thought, well, if we think they're interesting, maybe other people would think so as well. So here we go.
Yeah.
Ready?
Okay.
Which one do you want to? Do you want to tackle a question number one, two, three?
I like that one right there.
That
The
one.
what does it take to engage with the intuitive mind? I like that one.
Take a deep breath.
Hmm.
Ready? Here we go.
What,
What
yeah,
does
we
it
should
take?
really tap into the intuitive mind to answer that
Uh-huh.
question
Yeah.
about what does it take.
So what are you doing right now, Paul, to tap into the intuitive mind?
There's several things that um, I've practiced over the years and with the school I was with, exercises that we did to tap into the intuitive mind. Um, I think the obvious one is go to sleep because you you enter into the intuitive mind that way, but you don't get to participate necessarily consciously. So, um,
You know what? I don't think we've ever really talked about that part of it, about
about
being in the
dreams.
sleep state and
Hmm.
that accessing the intuitive mind. So maybe say a little bit more about that before you keep going forward with your answer.
Well, I think a lot of people are familiar with brain waves. Like there's different frequencies that your brain shifts into when you go to sleep and wake up, and or if you're hyper awake, there's like hyper awake would be gamma, and then um, your daily waking state would be called beta frequencies. And then there's sort of in the zone, like runner's high and just kind of spacing out a little bit, but still awake would be alpha state. And then you go down into sleep levels, would be theta and delta. And those are like bandwidths of consciousness. And creators like yourself, artists will tap into theta states of mind, where your brain is like operating in these frequencies while you're awake. So it's like you're asleep, but you're also awake at the same
Mhm.
time. So you get this tremendously creative zone of the dream state, and you get to work with it with your music or with your art or um, with acting or speaking.
Mhm.
I think that's pretty cool where you
Yeah,
can be awake and be asleep at the same time. But
right.
I
And
think that's part
access.
of tapping into the intuitive mind as well, is learning how to shift your brainwave frequencies into these different bandwidths. What do you think?
Well, I think that you described that really well, actually. So that's my first thought. The second thought is that, oh, like we talked, like sometimes when I want to answer these, sometimes I want to go into a sequential manner,
Hmm.
such as, well, so where do I begin with tapping into my intuitive mind? Well, let's go to step one and step two.
Yeah.
And I'm doing my best not to do
That's not
that
a
right
bad
now.
answer, actually, no, to go
Yeah.
step, step, step
But I
into it.
think some people do want to have answers like that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I can give that right now, but I will give something, which is uh as as a creative, as someone who delves into that space a lot, I think, well, how did I begin that? Like in this
Hmm.
lifetime, where did I start? Like, how was I able to fluidly go into that? How am I still able to do that? How do I keep learning how to understand that process even more intentionally and tap into it? So, um, I think my answer is, how can I be aware of being awake and asleep at the same time?
Hmm.
Right. So I
Hmm.
know we have lucid. So we're talking about the dream state. So in the dream
Yeah. Yeah.
state, right, you're a little bit more lucid. Like I had some really profound dreams, speaking of this morning, that did have, it told me that it had a lot to do with this level of accessing different levels of mind. And it showed itself in different people that I care about deeply, that I trust deeply. And the images in the dream were, they were communicating with me through different bands of communication. And where I'm at with my life now is I'm trying to understand how to go into a different pathway or a portal of frequency. And that's what it showed. It's the so the dream was showing me that this person was trying to communicate with me, but I still needed to understand, like, unscramble this frequency that he was trying to communicate through.
Hmm.
And that I already had some understandings of another form of communication, which was like radio waves, typical. So this was a new type of symbol in my dream that I had not seen yet, that I'm starting to unscramble, but it's there.
Hmm.
And one of the things that really pulled me into this dream, but pulled me into wanting to understand it more, was this huge desire for love. Like it's the person that presented this image to me was all I could think of him. I think of him as just love, like love oozing out of him all the time. So I woke up this morning thinking, I'm going to give that some more attention. I'm going to be more aware of how love has a frequency. And there you go. That's as far as I went with it.
Hmm.
So I'm going to, and I know
Okay.
that has to do with intuition. How do I know that? Experience is one, but the other way that I know it is that uh, sometimes this devotional avenue that I take when I'm in this world of intuitive rep, reciprocation of information, it's a devotional act. When I was little, I feel like I was much more fluid with it. The more information, the more educated, the more learned I became, then some of that learned information interfered with that transmission.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it became a little too intellectual.
Yeah.
And so now I'm on the other side where I think both still are at play because I want to know how to access this other level on purpose with
Yeah.
still that fluidity of uh, action. I know I said a lot there. I'm not sure if any of that even made sense, but
Well,
that's what
one of the
came to
things
me.
that you said, I think, was um, that that sparked something in me, and that was about symbols. You were talking about dream symbols, and I think that's for me, that's been a readily accessible doorway into the intuitive mind, and that is to look at life as symbols, look at circumstances that happen in my life as symbolic.
Mm,
Um, Recently went through the shamanic system that Richard Rudd had developed on his site with the gene keys, and there's all these symbols, animal symbols and natural symbols. And I think anytime you tune into the world as symbolic,
mhm,
you kind of open that door into the intuitive mind, because I think intuition speaks in symbols. It speaks in poetry. It speaks in the abstract like that. And
mhm.
you can communicate that way as well
Right.
with other people. You can sense that way um, in these abstract symbols. So
Mm,
I think that's a doorway. Um, and you and I have talked about this before. Just this sheer stillness, I think,
mhm.
helps you tap into that intuitive side of life.
Yeah.
My students, my academic students, I typically prescribe a concentration exercise. It's a stillness exercise, but I call it a concentration exercise, where you focus on a candle flame and you hold your focus on that candle flame for at least 5 minutes.
Mhm.
And it's framed as this is going to help you with your tests, and it's going to help you with your stamina to get all the way through this test. But mainly what it does, secretly what it does, is it helps them tap into their intuition about what the question is really asking and how to access different parts of their memory and their mind. And it creates this still zone that then they can feel an answer
Mhm.
and tap into their storage unit. I call it a warehouse, but they can tap into their storage, memory storage, and wisdom.
I know
So that's another doorway, is just sheer stillness.
we
And
were talking earlier about education, and I do think that that's good point, Paul. All of that is good, but I'm gonna reinforce that this wonderful body that we have and the mind. There's really not a lot on our day to day being raised as children into the educational system. We're not really always taught the value of how to create that bond and create that bridge of
mhm,
that's a union. That
yeah,
union needs to be strengthened and developed. Um, and I totally agree with that. Like
yeah,
I think when I was little, it was so fluid for me, but yet I also had a mind. I mean, you could just, I mean, poof, it went everywhere. Whoo, it was fast. It dart around the corner and back, before you knew it.
hmm,
And trying to harness that is the thing that I think is important. To harness the intuitive mind means to harness then how you focus your mind, how you
Oh, the
focus your
conscious part of things.
attention,
Yeah,
the conscious part of things,
yeah, grabbing a hold of that attention and saying, "Whoa, whoa, horsey,
harnessing the
whoa."
attention. It's like, wait a
Yeah,
minute, but that also takes, oh, it's a workout,
yeah,
So hopefully you're doing some disciplines daily, such as what the ones you just described,
yeah,
to help you be as present and to keep directing your attention back. And that does, I think that to be aware that that is an action that will help open those different
mhm,
doorways to the intuitive mind will help. And again, there's no shortcut around that because the individual, I believe, that's on you. The onus is on you to develop that state to another level. Like, as an
yeah.
example, I was walking yesterday and I've really made it a point not to put anything in my ears, just to listen and just to be present in the walk. And this time of year is when I'm starting to assemble my annual Christmas cards, since I make my own Christmas cards. And I've been collecting my objects of what that's going to be. And I looked out, and there's this beautiful, beautiful, vibrant leaf, this red leaf. And I was immediately drawn to it, picked it up, put it in my pocket. And my mind is already like, I know what this is for. It's going to be part of me creating something.
Mhm.
So there's this fluid action. Like I'm already creating what this Christmas card is going to be, but I don't stop and think about it every step of the moment. I'm incubating all the time. And for me, that's also part of engaging in the intuitive mind is trusting that an action or an intention um, that you've already set into motion
Mhm.
is going to engage and open the doorway for the intuitive part of this interaction. It's going to take place. And that's one little moment in time. So,
So I- what I'm hearing is maybe we need a different definition of intuitive mind. Because I know when I hear the word or the idea of intuitive mind, I typically go to something like mm, knowing without knowing. Like, oh, I just got the answer. Oh, I figured this out without really reasoning and thinking. It's just like this pure knowing that just came to me. But now I'm starting to think maybe intuitive mind is connected mind. And then maybe that's all it is. And
mm,
you happen to tap into knowledge and wisdom that you have available and
right.
other people's knowledge. But it's tuning into a frequency that is connected with others, with life, with the rhythm of consciousness. And that's intuitive mind. And there's
Right.
a lot of ways into that. I mean,
Right.
there's the poetry, there's the symbols, there's stillness, there's creativity, there's love. We talked about that also, and there's prayer, meditation, all these different ways into that state of
Mm,
connectedness, and
right.
we'll just call that the intuitive mind
Right.
or the dreamscape or the dream time.
Right.
Now,
Yeah.
there's another question here that I think links right into this, and that is, do you think intellect gets in the way of this intuitive side of life or tapping into the intuitive side of life? And
Okay, Paul,
how?
say yes or no first, because that's a yes or no one.
I
You,
I'm gonna say no.
okay.
I think a few years ago I would have said yes, but
Mm,
almost like there's a war between intellect and intuitive. But I think ideally there's a synthesis that's going on here between intellect and intuitive. They can support each other. Like when you tap into your intuition, it can support your intellectual reasoning process and vice versa. Your
mhm,
reasons can, like I do this with uh, coaching my students. They'll even on something as mundane as grammar, they'll say a phrase or a sentence and they'll go, yeah, I think this is the answer. They'll feel it, they'll intuit the right
mhm,
answer. And I'll say, now we need a reason underneath that, supporting that intuition so that anytime you see something like this, you've got a reason as well as that feeling.
mhm.
So I think they complement each other. But I think a while back I would have said it interferes.
Yeah, I'm
Like
going to
it's one or
agree.
the other, you're braining this thing you're thinking too much about this. You need to just calm your mind down and click into your intuition. What do you think?
Well, I, I'm going to I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to say no.
You can't do that. Oh, you're a
Please, can
Gemini.
I?
Yeah.
Please, can I?
Geminis can do that. Yes.
Geminis could do that.
Yeah.
um, but boy, you gave a really good answer, and I agree with that as well. But this is why probably I have to say yes and no because I think it just depends.
On what?
I think the yes, it gets in the way when one is oblivious to the fact that they are just, it's almost like the seesaw.
Oh,
When
yeah.
you're
Like you can get
so
trapped in the intellect.
when you're
Yeah.
so intellectual,
Yeah. Yeah.
oh my, and there's nothing on the other side to balance it out or weigh it out
Yeah.
that you refer to as the reasoning, or
Hmm.
then I think that's a hard yes.
Hmm.
And I think a person can get mired really tightly into defending their intellect or I think, and I think by then then you don't have
Hmm.
an opening, to have the
Yeah.
others, to
Yeah. If you
that
always need
intuition.
a reason and you always need evidence and you always need hard facts, and then yeah, that can be a little trapping.
You kind of get stuck in this world that's your reality, but I think at times you can be oblivious that there's more to it than that. So that's
Hmm.
why I would say it's a hard yes. However, I would also say it doesn't, but you've already given the answer to that one. It doesn't, because if you are pretty fluid with your intellect and the intuition, and you're relying on both, you're aware that both of them are needed, that's where I would say no.
Do you think it can flip around the other way where the intuitive side of life gets in the way of your intellect?
Okay, so there's a person that I am aware of. Um, I know her a little bit. That's what I'm saying I'm aware of. And other people have shared their experience with this person, and I've observed it to a bit. This person is
Hmm.
completely in the intuitive realm. It's so much so that it's sometimes difficult to follow
Hmm.
a line of reasoning or thinking, or um, so again, the word harness, and it's like it's so like it's the intuition is taking over their lives. And again, I don't even know if I could use the word intuition, but they're in this place where sometimes they don't know how to pivot
Oh,
or
we've
bounce
had
around.
intuitive reports like that too,
Yeah.
in our first season, where there was somebody who was lightly tethered to this earth plane. You know, they were
Mhm.
sort of
Yeah.
floating in this ethereal realm
Right.
and barely communicated, and they were listening to the voices of those who had passed on, and yeah, lightly tethered, I think, is a good
Hmm.
way of
Yeah.
identifying someone.
Yeah. When I was younger, gosh, I was like not maybe 21, 22. I remember going into a grocery store. And I remember this was the first time I experienced this, but it was so overwhelming because I literally could hear thoughts, people's thoughts. I could hear it.
Hmm.
And it was so intense for me that I had to leave. And I thought, what the heck was that about? Um, I've got a lot of thoughts about it, but I reflect on it multiple times. But my first thought was, I mean, is that what we sound like when our thoughts are just, we've got no harnessing? What I mean,
Yeah,
is that what it's like to just hear nothing but poof,
yeah.
cars hitting into each other, thoughts boom, boom, things are just
I
bumping
feel for
into
those
each other.
people who, yeah, the
It's,
filters are low, and
yeah.
they feel people's feelings and they hear people's thoughts, and it's tough. It is tough. I had a similar issue when I was younger too, where I think I received a lot of people's thoughts and feelings, and it was this jumbled mess of barrage that
Yeah.
I just wanted to be away from that.
Yeah. Huh.
Couldn't be around people,
Yeah.
and crowds really, they scared me, but they also confused me, and
Mhm.
yeah. So, yeah, that it can flip around the other ways,
Yeah,
the
it
other way.
can. And so I don't know if we really answered that one very well, but other than for me, it can be a hard yes at times. It could be a hard no. I
Hmm.
think the ideal place, though, is I think this is where you're at. I'm certainly striving to be there. Is I don't think I let it get in the way as much.
I think judgment is, um, it can be used, can be used for good or for evil.
Mhm.
But I think it's an intellectual process, judgment, evaluation, analysis. Sure, that's fine. That's good stuff. But we can get carried away with judgment.
Yeah.
And I think that can slam the door on intuition as well when
Right.
we start
Right.
judging things. I personally think that's a big element of the story of the Garden of Eden
Mm.
is judgment. I think the reason that we shut ourselves off from this connected mind, this Garden of Eden of connectedness, is we started judging things. We started intellectually identifying things, and then we started judging them as good and bad. And that's that, the symbol of the tree of the knowledge of the good and evil. And
So you're
yeah,
saying
I got
that
a little
was a
carried away with that.
you're saying that was like after the eating of the forbidden fruit?
Yeah,
Is that what you mean by that?
the forbidden fruit. It opened our eyes to
Mhm.
see that um, things could be evaluated and then therefore judged
Yeah.
as productive or not productive, or good or bad, or good or evil. And there's a tremendous responsibility with that kind of judgment that I don't
Mhm.
think we were quite ready for that responsibility
Mhm.
of wielding that. And,
Mhm.
and so we've had what 300,000 years of that journey of becoming
Well,
responsible with
the trial and error of it.
our ability, our
Mhm.
judgments. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah.
All
Uh,
right, you pick a question.
all right, Paul. Um, oh, let's jump into this one. I'm going to skip one there. We, what are stars? What are stars?
What are stars?
And then that finishes, and then that continues with, and what's our connection to stars
Mm-hmm.
and the planets in
Planets
space?
and space. Wow.
So the whole question is, what are
Nice.
stars and our connection to them and our connection to the planets and space? Where do you begin with that one?
Jeez. Okay. Uh,
So I'm going to say, I don't know if I can say what stars are. Like, I don't know, I can't answer that. And this is me being intellectual now. I don't know if I could answer what a star
mm-hmm.
is. I think there's some definitions that are out there that I think are right and accurate. So I don't think I can say what a star is. I can tell you what I feel a star is. I'm going to go for there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go for there. Um, I think of stars as part of an expression of intelligence and light and love. So I think stars
Hmm.
are a formation that is expressing itself of something that's at the core, as part of something that's a core in all of us, core in the galaxy of the universe. It's so I think it's a thought that's in the form of a star that's illuminating and also part of um like it has a silent but an important purpose in our universe.
So it's like an emanation point
Yeah.
of life, of consciousness.
Yeah. Like I would call you a star. I would call myself a star. I'd call a tree a star. I would also call my dog Mia a star. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
so, but it's just that the star, when we draw a star, we look up into the star. It's
Mm-hmm.
just that it's taken that form of a star, right? So, but
Yeah.
this, but I'm also a star, and it's taken the form of what you see in front of you here.
Okay. Well, how deep can you go? What about like the cells of your body?
That's what I'm
Aren't those
saying.
little tiny
Yeah,
stars floating
that's it.
around
Yeah,
inside
yeah. Things
you?
that are
Huh.
invisible are also part of that light, but it's just taken on a different form.
Yeah, I could kind of see them as I mean, we're talking abstract here. I mean,
We are.
scientists, I know, I'm sure the physicists out there are cringing. They're like, "Oh, it's
Just
helium in
answer.
a super fusion reaction, duh."
Just answer it this way, would you?
Yeah. But it's more than a super fusion event in
Yeah, which
of
I would agree
gases.
with. I would agree.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean
that's
it
part
is
of it.
that
Yeah,
also, but
yeah.
there's a tremendous amount of symbolism that goes into star,
Mhm.
um, and also consciousness. I mean, you think of our star, our sun, emanating this solar wind of particles and gravity and electromagnetic waves to all of the planets in our little solar system. And that's like a huge giver. It's just it's giving, 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 giving of heat and light and energy and electric uh, energy, and constantly this
Mhm.
giver of life. And I think there's a pretty good symbol in that, that
Yeah.
there's this source of
A-
life that
yeah,
comes in.
and is life, not just the giver. I just also think I think it's
And
also
it is,
is
yeah, yeah.
life.
And why can't we abstract that down into the localized version, into a
Right,
person or a dog
right,
or a tree,
right,
and say that is also emanating life. It is
right.
reflecting and flowing this life energy through it as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
Hmm.
And I think therein then lies the connection. It's it's all we're all we are all it, and we are all part of it, and it is us. And yes, there's a scientific way of explaining what
Hmm.
those are, which I really appreciate that people can do that and understand that. And yes, it's also more,
Yeah.
because I think there's something in this pulsing universe uh, that we depend on. And I think the more we contemplate it or give it our attention, we'll understand how deeply rooted we are into what that star is and how we are also that star.
Hmm. I was watching a physicist yesterday, watching a video,
Of course you
and
are.
of course, and he was talking about how uh, there's a current theory that it looks at the elements, like in the periodic table, those elements that we study, um, and they say effectively these are not different elements. They're not different. We call them different things, but there is one continuum of wavelength field. There's one continuous field that is emanated throughout this entire universe. And these things that we identify as different elements are, um, they're just little tweaks of that field, that unified field. And so we identify them as separate, but they're not separate. They're not different. They're not individual. They're not different particles. They're part of a wave, a continuous wave. I thought that was great. I thought that was
Yeah.
fantastic. I really appreciate theoretical physicists and all these physicists that philosophize, because they come so close to saying,
Yeah.
um, consciousness is
Hmm.
it. It's
Right.
just it's all consciousness, and it's different levels of consciousness, and it's different vibrations of consciousness, but all of it can be summed up as that.
Yeah. And then this the naming of things to help us kind of further delineate what we're trying to describe.
Yeah.
In
Like
some,
planets.
that's
We
right.
name the planets and they have these different personalities, and
Mhm.
astrology is built around these planets in our solar
Mhm.
system. having these influences on us.
Yeah. I mean, back to your origin story, taking a bite of the apple here. It's wow, the eyes are opened a little bit more, but maybe are they really opened a little bit more? Because
Hmm.
now we've got to start describing what I'm seeing, what I'm feeling, what I think it is, what I don't think it is. So maybe I need to name it this. Maybe we need to study this a little bit more.
Hmm.
This whole other process has begun when prior to that, why it wasn't necessary.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Well, when you're a baby, you don't have that much responsibility, right? You just
Hmm.
got to eat and sleep,
Yeah,
basically.
right.
Um, but as soon as you start flipping over and crawling around and investigating stuff, then the level of responsibility starts going up. Like, don't put that thing in your mouth and don't stick your tongue in the wall socket and don't. There's some parameters that start coming in, and that's I think that gets us towards this realm of don't do this, that is better, this is good, this is wrong, this is bad. We've had it since we were little babies. We get these parameters of good and bad and judgment, but in the beginning, there's not. It's just all good. Everything's good.
Mhm.
There's nothing really expected of you. Um, just live and eat and breathe and do your baby thing.
Mhm.
So that I draw that parallel to the Garden of Eden story, where in the beginning we're just having a great time with creation, and then we start getting a little bit more facile with um, directing attention and moving our attention and maybe creative energies, and then that responsibility starts increasing also. Like
Yeah.
you gotta do things with this power that you now realize that you have. Your eyes are opened
Yeah.
and you can see, oh, I do have some power. What are you going to do with that power? And how
Yeah.
are you going to wield that power?
Well, I think that if for all of the mothers, fathers, teachers that are listening that are always surrounded by especially young children, young little guys, this would be a really good question to ask them. From where you stand in your life right now, in your little miniature body life,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think the stars are?
Hmm.
And then just maybe record it and not don't don't edit it, don't dissuade them, don't know it's this or know it comes from this. Try not to do anything other than keep asking them, what do you tell me what you think the stars are?
Yeah.
And then ask them, well, how's that connected to this or that? And I would love it if maybe there could be a little record of all of their answers
Yeah. And see how it evolves
and see how it
over their
evolves
lifetime. Yeah.
and see how maybe it's interfered with or
Intellect kicks in. Yeah.
intellect or it doesn't. I don't know. I think that would be a
Mm.
wonderful experiment for anyone to do at any age, but I think particularly,
Yeah.
and I think
Go
that
out
would,
into the night sky. We've heard that in several reports.
hmm
You go out into the night sky and just look up and contemplate the stars and
yeah,
or project your consciousness out to stars to just get out of your little tiny world that you've trapped yourself in and just
yeah,
let your freedom expand.
right.
There
And
was
not only,
a whole cool thing in Edgar Casey material about the planets. He did talk quite a bit about astrology and the influences of the planets. He was pretty big into astrology in the reports that he did. And it talked about how Casey, in between lifetimes, visited various planets and spent some time in different planets and also spent some time in the sun. I thought that, man, that was just fascinating as a kid.
oh, that
How
would
do
be
you do that? Can you project your consciousness? Yeah, there's astral projection, but when's the last time you did an astral projection and then went into the middle of the sun
Wow.
So
Wow.
that's that's a trip. But
Well, are
there
we,
are things that you can learn from projecting yourself into these bodies and see what how your consciousness has changed because of those influences.
well, I think before we go on to the next question, I think that's a good question to continually ask yourself because I think it opens up a space for answering for yourself what intuitive mind is and whether the intellect gets in the way or not,
Hmm.
right? I think all of those are also kind of lead
Yeah,
into
that's
it
a daily question, I'd say.
daily. Okay, but now that we're talking about, because I've never heard that one about Edgar Casey going I've never heard of that report. So I've got
Yeah.
more questions for you, but maybe that can lead into this next question, Paul. You
Mm.
ready?
Okay.
So it's another yes or no. It starts off with as do intuitive reports reveal past lives that are extraterrestrial in nature.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, that's a doozy.
So is that a yes or no, or is it a
Do
both?
they? Yes, I would say.
Do
Yes.
intuitive reports reveal past lives that are extraterrestrial in nature?
Well, okay, I'll say indirectly they do. Um, I don't really recall any reports that said you are from the Andromeda galaxy and you're here visiting on vacation, or um, there were plenty of reports that did say that someone came from or were their lineage was from the Syrian constellation or from the Beldane or from the Centaurus or
Yeah, I've had a few of those.
yeah, but they didn't quite say you are a centaur from this other planet and you're here and you just happen to have this human skin on this time. It was more like a heritage or a like you came from that location.
So
I
before you
hmm,
go further, tell me
yeah.
what you think is meant by that question. Like, do intuitive reports reveal past lives that are extraterrestrial in nature? What do you think that what do um, how would
Well, I
you
think that the person who sent that in is trying to see if like actual reports say, yeah, you're an alien.
you think
Yeah,
that's what the question is?
I think so.
Okay.
But the question sparks this whole deeper investigation, and it ties into the last question about the stars and the planets and space and all that. I personally don't think there's such a thing as distance. I don't believe in distance as a as a standard practice. I mean, yeah, it looks like there's distance, and we experience distance, especially if you drive across Kansas, from Colorado to Missouri.
Mhm.
There's a lot of distance in there, and there's a lot of time that you spend in a little tin can on a highway. But fundamentally, I don't think there really is distance. And I think that plays into this question about extraterrestrials, because when you think that we emanated from, let's say, Syrian star system and came to ancient Egyptian land and set up a civilization there. Physically speaking, you can't get from there to here um, in any kind of time frame. But if you bend that space-time continuum, if you bend that concept of distance, then you could be here in a matter of moments, a few seconds, and you're here. Speed of
Mhm.
thought. So I think it's more symbolic, is my long-winded answer about this. I think the reports that say, yeah, you're from this star system
Mhm.
or that star system, I think it's more symbolic and energetic that you're from a collective consciousness that has an identity, has a group identity, and you come from that group identity consciousness.
Yeah, so reports that I have received, they all have the common denominator of Syrian, me being from the
Yeah.
group Syrian series.
Yeah, me too.
So maybe that's an answer a little bit to this question. Well, yeah, a report has indicated that the group that I originated from was this. I mean, it didn't say it
Hmm.
that way, but something to
Yeah.
that effect. So I think maybe there's like a direct answer is yes, it will indicate, depending on the type of report you get.
Yeah.
And if it's deemed that that information needs to be given at that time, yes, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Right. However, um, it's always going to be the intuitive reports will reveal past life obvious information and that extraterrestrial part, I think the onus is on you to uncover as
Hmm.
well.
I've been reading this question, and now I'm thinking maybe the person who asked it is asking about, have there ever been reports of someone on another planet, like extraterrestrial?
Mm,
Like I'm on the planet Zebop or something,
hmm.
and I had this cool past life profile, and there were 6 moons in the sky and all of that. I have not ever heard a report about that. I think because we're in this terrestrial system of Earth,
Hmm.
that all our reports, and I mean, just be where you are, So all of your reports are going to talk about this particular learning system that we're in here on this planet. We're kind of tethered to this planet karmically, dharmically, and we're playing out this learning system on this planet. Yeah, there's other planets, and yeah, there's other learning systems, there's other star systems, but we're here now, and so that's why they all pertain to this system here, and the lifetimes are this system.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean,
Kind of.
that's unless that person was here, I think we've answered this question in as many different
Yeah.
ways as we
I'm suspecting they're an extraterrestrial now,
oh
whoever
good.
asked that question.
Oh yeah, right. Well,
Yeah,
didn't we
because
say in one of our
that's
episodes?
exactly what an alien would ask.
Didn't we say that we all have some kind of that in us anyway? Right?
Yeah.
We all are the aliens anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. There have
Yeah.
been manipulations over the
Yeah.
centuries,
On some degrees, right?
millennia. Yeah. There have to
Okay.
be. Yeah.
Last question.
Yeah.
The last forever question. Not. What are the levels of consciousness and how do I begin to fold them into my current life? This
Mm.
is like
Yeah, that's good.
let me first tell you
What are the
this
levels of consciousness, and how do I begin to fold them into my current life?
this is
Okay.
a question that will take a forever answer
Yeah.
and a forever experiences and a lot of reflection and but for the now, how will we answer this?
Hmm. I would probably start with saying there is only consciousness, and levels of consciousness are just different ways of looking at consciousness. Like you go out and on a walk in nature, there's just nature, it's just is out there. It's all the stuff out there in nature. But you can look at the trees and go, ooh, tree. And you can look at the little stream that running by and go, ooh, stream. And it looks different, right? But nature just says, hey, bud, it's just nature. I'm just doing my thing here. But the way we look at things define them as levels or define them as different and separate. But it's all one flowing soup of, there I go with the soup metaphor again. Now, how do you begin to fold them into your life? Well, maybe metaphorically, that's like how do you fold nature into your life, right? I mean, you go out for a walk, and and you're in nature. Or you can invite nature into your house. You can pick some flowers and bring it into your house and bring some plants in and put them in pots. Then you got nature in your house, and then you can also go out of your house and go into nature. I think it's the same with consciousness and the levels of consciousness. You you invite them in, and you also go out and participate in them outside of your comfort zone, outside of your comfort little thinking box. It relates back to how we all started this whole thing with how do we engage with the intuitive mind, that connected consciousness.
Mhm.
Um, maybe it's just one word. You connect.
You
You know,
be, you do.
you connect is how you fold these levels of consciousness in. You connect with other people. You connect with nature. You connect with um, higher entities. You connect with your heart. You connect with spirit, angels, and that's how you bring these levels into your life.
Me, pointing at me. What's my answer?
Hmm. Yeah.
So I'm going to turn it around and ask a question. The question's been asked, and I'm going to ask a question back to this person. Um, are do you live with a family? Do you have a partner in life? Do you have children? Do you have a job? Do you have do you take a bath every day? Do you take a shower every day? What do you do every single day of your life? I would just simplify it right back down
Hmm.
to that. It's like if everything you are doing in life, whether you are asleep or you are awake, you're not beginning to fold it in. There's no beginning of folding consciousness
There you
into your
go.
life.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no that's what the question is asking. There is no beginning. There's it's you
Yeah. There's an
are
assumption that it's separate. Yeah.
That's right.
In the question. Right.
There is no separation from that.
Yeah.
And then therein lies the flaw in that question,
Hmm.
which is that you are already interacting. You
Yeah.
may not be aware of how you are interacting. You may not, maybe you're not allowing. Again, now I'm adding more
Yeah.
words to it.
Yeah.
Maybe there's not an allowance of how that is interacting or connecting with it. But again, that is only for you to answer. But I got to tell you, just whether it's making a conscious decision to make your bed in the morning when you wake up, whether it's a conscious decision of saying good morning to your significant other or to your children, I don't know. Every I I'm going to be a little bit more complex about it now, but now I'm adding karma and dharma to this. But this is where
Hmm.
the simplicity of that, the partnership of the karma and dharma, you are taking action in your daily life. And the more intentional you can be about that action and that activity and those choices, it's your dharma automatically kicks in. So this unfolding or how you fold consciousness is I would say don't make it more complicated.
Hmm.
However, invite the complexity, but also keep that very simple because you still have a day-to-day life that you are interacting with.
I think you're right. It's way simpler than we try to make it. I think with all of the analysis of spirituality and consciousness and levels of consciousness and
Mhm.
Akashic records and all the names that we give these components,
Right.
we start thinking that it's really complex. And how do I do this? And how do I do that? And you do it all the time, all day long. It's a matter of awareness of these aspects or these vibrations or these levels. Like if somebody said, "So where are the Akashic records?" I would probably say yes. You know, one of those terrible answers. They are. They're not in a location. You
Right.
don't go to the Akashic records. Just like you don't go to heaven. Heaven exists, and it's a it's a realm of consciousness. It's a frequency of consciousness. It's not a place that you jet off to after you die from this planet.
Right.
So that's I think that's probably the best answer.
Yeah.
What you said is mindfulness of every aspect of your life, and um, and go deeper inside of each of
Right.
these aspects of your
Right.
life.
There is no beginning. It is already occurring. And however, if you would like to do some practices in your life to deepen that, then please do that. Like
Yeah.
meditation, like breathing exercises, like
Stillness, prayer. Yeah.
stillness, prayer, other disciplines that have been around
Poetry. Yeah.
forever. I mean, just then do those things that help you move into that space more consciously, intentionally. Um, and then I think once you start doing things like that, then your body starts sinking in. The
Hmm.
the universe
Well, you'll have a
inside of you
real
starts.
experience,
Yeah,
yeah, that
things
you can
start
tap
unfolding.
into.
Things start
Yeah.
unfolding for you.
I think the more often you consciously practice that, the more you'll establish like a pathway in that you could identify this pathway, and you'll identify some methods that get you where you want to get. And yeah, it takes a little practice, and
Like,
um,
like for
you sh-
example, I'll myself for probably this year. This year I started it earlier in 2024. The practice I started um, was I do the Om chant internally, silently. And I do that chant, I do a cycle of that about 5 times throughout my entire body. And it's a silent Om chant. And I do that twice a day. And why do I do that? Well, I thought I want to know, experience for myself what that sounds like without the auditory sound. That's all. That's all I'm doing. So I'm just
mm,
experimenting with wanting to hear something that's not hitting my ears.
yeah,
But I
yeah,
also, as I'm hearing it internally, I can hear something else. So that's a practice that I'm doing along with other practices that I'm
hmm,
doing. But that's just an example of a practice of deepening my levels of consciousness and awareness so that I can every day when I'm awake and I'm doing my things, I'm much more connected.
hmm,
My intuition is ignited on another level.
yeah. It's tickled on
Yeah.
another level.
Yeah. And
There's
guess
a
what?
practice.
When we decide or and I decide to do something else, to another whatever practice, then guess what? More of that will come in another way. So
Yeah.
it's go ahead. You were going to
Well,
say.
there's a like a spirit of experimentation that
Hmm.
can settle in, that you invite in, where you just say, I wonder what's going to happen if I do this.
Hmm.
Like for a while, I experimented with this very thing with the levels of consciousness. Was I I would I would get up and I'd just practice tuning into air, just the quality of air. I'm breathing air. I'm breathing. What does it feel like in my lungs? And the movement of air in the room or outside, and tuning into air. And then I'd shift down into heat and fire and flame, and where is the heat in the room? And you just, it's like an elevator, and you're shifting to tune into another element. And then you shift into the moisture in the room, or the moisture in my body, the water element. And then you can shift into earth element, carbon things, and things that are built, and things that have form, and things that have substance. And then you cycle back up again, and you're back up to air, and then you go to fire and water. And cycling through those elements is great training for this last question here, the levels of consciousness, because they each have a different quality to them. It is one soup of consciousness, but you can tune into these different levels,
Yeah.
and that it's a powerful stance to be able to shift like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And
in
that's,
general, there's this conscious level. Well, there's
yeah,
an unconscious level, and then there's a
right.
conscious level, and then there's a subconscious level, and then there's this super conscious level, and then there's
Sure.
all of them
Le-
blended all together.
levels within levels.
Yeah, and there's sub levels, and yeah,
Yeah.
that gets a little technical, and different systems name them different things. You go to India,
That's
and India, they'll have completely different level, but
that's
all of them do talk about levels
uh-huh.
of planes of existence, and
Thank you for all of our listeners and for all of the questions.
all
And we
four of you. Yes, you know who you are.
we're going to leave you with a question that we're not going to answer, Paul. So don't be tempted to answer this last
Oh,
question.
oh, that's mean.
But the last question is, what is discipline and what is the essence of discipline?
Oh, I'm dying here. I got it.
I
No,
know.
I won't. I won't. I won't.
Promise
Okay.
you won't. Because
Okay.
we may come back and answer that at another time. But
All right.
I think that's because I think everyone has an answer for themselves for this one. Okay, that's all. We'll leave it with that.
All right. Well, tune in for
Go,
the next show. I don't know what the next show is, but
yeah,
it's gonna be good.
go into it. Go into it. Get it? Go
Oh,
into it. Go into
okay.
it.
Once Upon a Quantum Leap is for your reference only. This podcast and the material is intended solely as educational information and should not be used for diagnosis or treatment of any health problem, financial, or legal advice.
You can listen to full episodes and find out about Paul and Capucine at onceuponaquantumleap.com. All reports shared on this show have been released with permission, and identifiers have been removed for individuals' privacy.
The intuitive reports referred to in each episode are available on our website, on the podcast page, and through links in our show notes. We encourage you to listen to those for greater context.
If you're interested in obtaining your own intuitive report, go to quantuminsight.co. That's quantuminsight.co. You can listen to us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.